Hi there, Chase from HighLevel here, and in this video we are going to walk through an overview of the campaigns section of HighLevel. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come here to marketing campaigns. You can see I already have some built, but I'll just create a fresh one right now. We'll give it a name like example. And the first thing you'll notice is by default it's in draft mode. So before it'll do anything, this will have to be changed to published. But the first thing that you want to do in a campaign is open up the campaign configuration. And let's walk through each of these items so that we know what they all do. The first one is a window, which is pretty important. So a window is essentially gives you the ability to have this campaign, or automation, as I like to use those two interchangeably. It will only happen during certain days or times, which can be important, right? So you wouldn't want a client to maybe get a text message in the middle of the night or super early in the morning. So we have the opportunity to set a window here, and you'll see that in the conditions you have two. You can do when or if. When is the most common. So what we're saying here is, okay, here's our window, Monday to Friday, 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. So let's say a lead comes in and it's supposed to, we've set up a trigger to add this lead to this campaign, but the lead comes in at Monday at 5:01 p.m. Well, what's going to happen is it's going to wait until when the window is between 8 a.m. and 5 p.m. So what's going to happen is Tuesday morning at 8 a.m. the lead will enter into this automation. If you set it to if, what's going to happen is when the lead comes in, if it came in at Monday at 5:01 p.m., it's going to say, okay, this window, we're not within this window, so I'm just going to completely ignore this lead, and the lead would never enter the campaign and nothing will happen. So pretty powerful. Make sure you understand the difference between if and when if you need to activate a window. Users. You can see I only have one user in this account for me in this location. If you had multiple users and you add them to a campaign, the leads will be round robin assigned. So user A gets the first lead that enters the campaign, user B gets the second lead, etc. So if you have multiple Twilio numbers assigned to different users, that's helpful because when a lead comes in and it becomes attached to a user, the voicemail drops go out from that user's number. The calls that come in get forwarded to whatever's set in that Twilio number settings. So that's helpful to be able to add users. The next campaign is essentially saying anyone who flows all the way through this campaign, send them to some other campaign next. This is helpful. What I like to do is, my initial campaign, a lead comes in, anyone who goes all the way through it and doesn't respond to anything, I want to feed them into a new campaign that's, let's say, a long-term nurture. Maybe it has 12 emails, one per month, ready to go, so that they go through like becoming a hot lead into someone who's not yet ready, and they're going to go into a different sort of nurture. The from address, from email and name, this is just what you want the emails to be sent out as. So typically, let's say it's contact@youragency.com, and then you could put either your agency name or your name. You could leave these blank and it will default to the user that's assigned to that lead. Lead value is nice, also important because you can attach a value to the leads that enter this campaign. You want to use the average lifetime value so that you can track that back in the reporting and be able to show clients not just how many leads were generated, converted, moved in the pipeline, but also a value, what they represent in potential revenue. A tag, here you can just tag people that enter this campaign if you wanted to. Allow multiple is if you switch it on, it means one contact, somebody can enter this campaign more than once. If it's a campaign for, let's say, an offer, the client doesn't want one person to be able to get or use the offer more than once, you would turn this off. For testing, when you're building campaigns, it's helpful to leave it on because a lot of times you'll want to add yourself over and over again to the campaign to test that everything's working like you thought. Stop on response means, let's say you have an email, a text message, an automated phone call in this campaign, and the text message goes out and they reply to the text with a question. Well, that's a reply. So if you have stop on response, as soon as they reply to any piece of the automation, the rest of the automation shuts down. It's a great way to not annoy people. So if somebody claimed an offer and the next step is to book an appointment, and your campaign is all about, hey, thanks for claiming the offer, the next step's to book, let's go ahead and book you. Hey, are you still interested? Let's book you, blah, blah, blah. If they say yes, you don't want them to get 5 more emails and text messages about booking when they already have. So stop on response is convenient. Event start date. This is cool if you are running a campaign for an event, right? So let's say your client is having an in-store cool sculpting event. Maybe they're a med spa, and it's coming up on January 31st. Well, when you put in a date here, and you can pick a time, this sets the ability to trigger something in relation to this event. So your first item in the campaign, you now have the ability, and we'll talk about these in a second, but let's say you want the first one to be a text message reminder. So let's just we'll just leave that here as a placeholder. What I can now do is I can say, okay, I want this text reminder to go out 2 days before this event. So this right here will be in relation to this day and time. So on January 29th, this text message is going to go out. So this works for, you can add multiple before steps, and they all relate to the date and the time of the event here. Once you get into not before, but immediate or after, they're in relation to the step before. So we'll reiterate that point as we go. So always save your campaign configuration. And now we're going to talk about the different types of elements that we can add to a campaign. So an SMS is a text message, as we just saw. When you add one, it opens up to the editor. You can create templates if you want and just choose a template, or you can build your text right here. So let's say we wanted to do hi and then add some personalization. So we're going to go contact first name, and that'll fill in the first name of the contact. So it'll say, hi Chase, type whatever else you want in your message. Notice that in each step you can set its own window. So let's say you don't have a window in the campaign, you don't care when people come into it, but one specific element in the campaign, you do want to have a window, you can turn that on here, and it works the same way as we talked about before. You can also attach a file. You can either search one on your computer like that, or you can attach it via a URL. Over here, you want to test, so go ahead and put in your phone number, hit send test. The system will send you the text message so you can review it on your phone, make sure it's good to go, and then just remember to hit save. So we'll hit save here, and let's move on. Next is Facebook Messenger. This is cool. Keep in mind that you can't, first of all, you have to connect your Facebook page in settings integration. Second of all, the user has to initiate a Facebook message to the Facebook business page before you can use this, right? So we can't just start talking to people via Facebook. They have to first initiate the conversation in Facebook Messenger, but if they have done that, you can add a messenger step. So it's just like a text message step. And if they have talked to the system to this location via Facebook Messenger already, then the messenger step will go out to them. Next up, email. Pretty straightforward. A couple more options here. You've got obviously your email subject. Notice you can add emojis, which is cool. Here's your email builder. Again, you can add a window. You can attach a file. Oops. And same thing, you can test it. Send a test to yourself, which you always want to do. Next up, we have the call step. So the call step is cool. The call step is a great way to force clients to call leads right away. So what this does is when a lead hits a call step, the system will call the number of the business or the user that's attached. And when they answer, a recording will say, you have a new lead from Chase Buckner, or whatever you type here in this whisper message field. You can customize that. Notice you can add the customization merge fields over here as well. So you could say, you have a new Facebook lead from, put in the person's first name, last name, press any key to connect. And so essentially what happens is if I receive that call and it says I have a new lead and I press any key, let's say push 1, It's going to then dial the lead, and if the lead answers, bridge the call. So it's a great way to force a client's staff to connect with leads right away. Some clients feel it's a little too much, but the ones who are up to use it, it's really powerful to make sure that they get on the phone right away. Call timeout and disable voicemail detect kind of go hand in hand. So by default, you can, so this is turned off, right? If you turn it on, what happens is, I'm sorry, vice versa. It's on by default and you can turn it off if you'd like. If you hover here, you can read the tooltip. So basically, calls will patch instantly. We will not listen to see if the voicemail picked up on the lead's side. This means the campaign will be remarked as replied even if voicemail picked up. So if you turn that on, so the system by default has, through Twilio, voicemail detection. It's pretty good. It works about 80% of the time, but keep in mind it's not perfect. So 20% of the time it might not work. Why is this important? Because remember when we talked about stop on response on a campaign? If you have that turned on, the voicemail detection is, when it works, it knows that it hit a voicemail, which is not a reply. So the campaign will continue on. If somebody answers the call and the call is bridged, then the system considers that a reply. And if you have stop on reply turned on, it will shut down the rest of the campaign. If you don't like those odds of approximately 80%, you can disable it yourself. And what you could do instead is say, I want to turn that off and I want the timeout to happen after 20 seconds because I know most voicemails wait at least 30 seconds, and don't quote me on that, before a voicemail picks up. So maybe you want to take this down to 15 seconds to be safe. And that way you know for sure that if the business doesn't answer within 15 seconds, it's not going to hit voicemail. The campaign's going to continue on. Custom time, same thing. That's another opportunity to set a window. All right, what do we have next? We have voicemail. Voicemail drops are really cool. So essentially you record a file on your phone, and typically what happens is your phone's going to make that a MP4 file, and the system accepts MP3s. So just Google MP4 to MP3 converter, convert the file, and then you can attach it here. Again, you can set a window. What a voicemail drop is, it's ringless voicemail. So the person's phone vibrates, says you have a new voicemail, even though they didn't actually get a phone call. It's a great way to use that in conjunction with the other elements. If they haven't replied to your text, the call connect didn't work, for maybe they didn't answer, send a voicemail as well. And that's really effective. Next up, we have a wait step. So if you just want to add a wait step in here for whatever reason, when they hit this step, they'll wait based on what you set here in the settings before they move on to the next step. Manual SMS and manual call. So this is what we call our power dialer. Essentially, let's say you have a sales team and you want them to manually call people, and you're going to generate a huge list of leads, and you want them to just stack up. Your agent sits down, starts their shift, and they just start dialing away. If you add a manual call or a manual SMS step, when the lead hits this step, it will generate the manual action, which is here in contacts, manual actions. So when people hit that step, they'll populate here, assigned to the user that they're assigned to from the campaign. And then that person can come in here and there's a play button and they just hit play and it will call the first lead. After the call concludes, the thing pops up, says, how did you win the call? Was it a voicemail, etc.? And then it just goes right on to the next one. So it's a power dialer. If you have experience with those, that's the way that it works. And that can be very cool. So let's hop back to our campaign, and we were in example campaign, and it works the same way for manual SMS. The manual SMS is a way to make sure that you're lawfully doing SMS marketing because somebody is manually sending each SMS. And that's the way why that was built. Webhook is super powerful because it gives you the ability to take the information from the lead and send it somewhere else. So basically, if you're familiar with Zapier, you can use webhooks to take information from HighLevel to Zapier, and then you're off to the races to wherever else you want to send or use that data. Let's continue on with our last one, which is add a task. Basically, when it hits this step, it'll create this task. You can put the description in here and set when it's due based on when it was created. So those are our steps, but now let's talk about the timing. So as I mentioned before, if you're using an event, or if you're, let's say you're not using an event, and let me get rid of this, but the people coming into this campaign have an appointment set. So if they use the booking widget, they have an appointment, the system will know that. And let's say, so you could build an appointment reminders campaign. Same thing. If you have an event set, or if the user has an event coming up, you can use these befores, and they'll be in relation to the day and time of the event. Once we get into 0 or after, so after, let's say, 3 minutes, if I set this one to after 2 minutes, this means it's going to go out 2 minutes after the last step. So keep that in mind. It's not in relation to the beginning of the campaign. It's in relation to the step before. Another thing to note is if you're using your very first step, let me remove these, and you want it to go out right away, you have two options. You can set immediately, or you can set after 0 minutes. What's the difference? Immediately will ignore a window. So if you have a window set and you want this to respect the window but go out right away, put after 0 minutes. If you don't care, you want it to happen immediately, regardless if there's a window, use the immediately setting. Okay, now let's hop out to our campaigns view real quick, and I just want to point out that you can see how many people are in a campaign. So if we click in here, it'll show us who's in the campaign, how far they are, meaning which step are they at. Which can be really helpful if you need to do, if you need to do some investigating or dig deeper into who is where within the system. Now let's talk about how to get people into campaigns. Now, the most common way is to use our form builder. So if we come over here and we go to form builder, you can build your own forms, and then you want to put those onto landing pages. And we have our funnel builder for that. So that's the easiest way to get leads into the system, right? Let's assume you create a form, you create a landing page, you put the form, you use the form element, add it to the landing page. There's one more step that you need to do to actually get somebody who goes through that form into the campaign that you want, and that's through a trigger. So we're going to come down here and let's create a new trigger. We'll give it a name. I'll call it example to keep it consistent here. And what we're going to do is we're going to select our trigger option of form submitted. We're going to add a filter. If I leave it like this, it'll be any form from the system, but I'm going to add a filter. So I'm going to say form is, and I'm going to pick one of my forms. So let's say it's this form I have called Power Dialer Test here. Whenever somebody fills out this form, now I come over here to the action side, and I'm going to say I want to add them to a campaign, and I'll select the example campaign that I just created. So whenever someone fills out this form, it's going to add it to the campaign that we just built. Again, have to make sure that you change this from draft to activate before this trigger will run. But this is a critical step, right? Because if you build your landing page and it has your form and you have your campaign and you want all the submissions to go into the campaign, but you forget to make a trigger, it's not going to happen. Okay, let's talk about the other option. Let's say you're not using our form builder, you have a WordPress website somewhere and you're using Gravity forms, and you want to take the people that fill out that Gravity form and add them to a HighLevel campaign. We're going to use Zapier for this. So let's take a look. I'm going to build one live. So here we have a client who's a restaurant, and they have a newsletter sign up form on their homepage. and they want people to go from the form into the HighLevel account. So what we're going to do here is we are going to go to Zapier, and I'm going to make a Zap. First, I'm going to search Gravity Forms, and the action that I want is a new form submission. It's the only one that Gravity Forms has available in Zapier. Now it gives me this webhook. So I'm going to copy this. I'm going to go into the back end of the website to Forms. I went to the form, and in Settings, I have the Zapier add-on here. Now this is going to be different based on what form provider you're using, right? So if you're using, I don't know, WooForms or JotForm or whatever, they should all have a Zapier, and it will be somewhat similar to this. So basically I'm going to click Add New, and it asks me to give it a name. So I'm going to say Newsletter Signups to HighLevel, and I'm going to paste my webhook. I like to turn on the admin labels, and I'm going to click Save. Now I go back to Zapier and I say Continue, and what it does is it runs it goes out and checks to see if it can see data. So we want to hit Test. Great, it's going to pull in some sample data, and now we're on to the second step. So this is where we choose HighLevel, and now we need to choose the action that we want. So you'll see here that you have the ability to add a contact, but what I want to do is I want to not only add the contact, but also add them straight into a campaign. So I'm going to choose Add Lead to Campaign, which accomplishes both. It creates a contact and it adds them to the campaign. So I'm going to click Continue, and then it's going to ask which account do I want to connect. Now I have already connected this account, but if you haven't connected your HighLevel account yet, it's going to ask you, a modal will pop up for the account ID. And you can get that by going to your account, and on the settings page, you'll find that here at the bottom, your API key. Once you have that set up, you'll see it available here. I'm going to select that. I'm going to hit Continue. And here's where you do the campaign selection and the field mapping. So when I click this, it's going to go into HighLevel, into that account, and check to see what campaigns are there. So here are the campaigns that I've created. I want to choose the newsletter sign up campaign. And now's where we do our field matching. So first name, I'm going to click this, and I'm going to find, so these are all the forms that it can see from Gravity Form, or sorry, the fields. This actual form only has an email field. So I can't do first name, last name, any of that, because it's not, there's no data coming through for the fields that are named those things. So I'm just going to do email field, and I'm going to match down here with your email is. So on Gravity Forms, I have it named your email is. In HighLevel, it's called email. So I'm just matching those two up. And as you can see, there are all these other options that I could be setting, right? So I could change my lead source to Instagram, Facebook, if I knew this was coming from a Facebook ad, let's say. I could add a source in here, like website. I can add tags if I want it to push through with a tag. But all I need for this one is email, so I'm going to hit Continue. And then I'm going to test and continue. And there we go. I'm going to turn it on. And the last thing I want to do is give it a name, because I forgot to do that. So I'm going to come up here and I'm going to say newsletter signups. And that's how you would use Zapier to bring leads from somewhere else into your HighLevel campaign. Hope that helped. See you in the next video.